Rick and Shane are county police officers. The two of them are on duty, chatting as usual. The radio goes off. Headquarters is chasing a group of robbers and needs Rick to intercept them on the road. The two listen to the action immediately, and a few minutes later, they arrived at the interception site. Rick laid the spikes on the ground, then parked the car on the side of the road and waited for the robbers' vehicle to arrive. After a while, a private car is being chased by police cars. It is the group of fleeing robbers. They ran over the spikes without incident. The tire scrapping made the car drift more than 10 meters, and eventually overturned and rolled to the side of the road. Now they don't know what happened to the robbers inside. Rick took the lead and approached the car carefully. One of the robbers climbed out of the driver's side and shot at the police at the first opportunity. A fierce gun battle broke out between the two sides. Rick was also hit in the chest. The police also shot this robber. Another robber just came out and fought to the death but was soon killed. Shane ran up to check on Rick's condition first. Luckily, he got up and said he was fine. The bulletproof vest he wore this morning saved his life. They didn't notice that someone else was in the car. Just as Rick was telling Shane not to tell his wife about the incident, the shot hit the vest's blind spot. Shane panicked and ripped open his shirt to stop the bleeding. He shouted at his colleagues to call an ambulance, and this was his best friend. After resuscitation, Rick is out of life-threatening but has been in a coma in a deep sleep, and he can vaguely see Shane every day with flowers to see him. I don't know how long it took, but Rick finally woke up. In his memory, Shane seemed to be here just now, but he soon saw the vase next to it. The flowers inside had long since withered, and it looked like no one had been here for a long time. He struggled to get up to check but fell straight to the floor, perhaps because he had been lying in bed too long. He pulled out the syringe and called out to the nurse to come and help him, but no one responded. After a while, he slowly adjusted and opened the door to the room. Rick rushed to the faucet and took a big gulp of tap water. Then he went to the hospital corridor, and he was stunned. The place had become very dilapidated. He wanted to find out what had happened, but it was awfully quiet. No one was there. Rick walked towards the nurse's station, and the first thing he tried to do was dial the phone but had lost the signal. When he came to another aisle, he looked in disbelief at the aisle inside, and there was a corpse lying on the floor that had been chewed up by something. Rick hurriedly turned around to the other side to check. The situation here was even worse. There were bullet holes and blood all over the walls, and even traces of explosions. Rick thought it was just a prank, but the door moved. Some hissing sounds came from inside, and palms were sticking out from inside. Look at his nails, are not normal people should have. Rick was devastated. Who could tell him what was going on here? The elevator had lost power, so he had to take the stairs to get out of this creepy place. The stairwell was filled with the smell of dust. Luckily, he had just taken a box of matches from the nurse's station, and after a few minutes, he finally opened the door to the first floor. The bright light made him uncomfortable, but he slowly walked out. Looking at the open space, there were white bags piled up, but all of them were corpses, and there densely were hundreds of them. Rick did not want to stay. They only wanted to leave this ghost place. Due to the weakness of his body, he could only use his hands and feet. But he was stunned by the sight before him. It looks like an army was stationed here, but now it's also devastated. There were too many strange things, and Rick was numb. He just wanted to hurry home and reunite with his wife. On the way, he would have liked to ride a bike, but a half-dozen bodies crawled toward him. This is not scientific logic. He soon returned home and called out his wife's name, but no one answered him, and even his son Carl was nowhere to be found. Rick has been checking all the rooms with no luck. Rick was a little broken. His wife and son were everything to him. Looking at the outside world, perhaps they have met with misfortune. Thinking about this, Rick cried out in pain and then smacked himself hard. If this is a dream, wake up. But this is the reality. Rick sat in front of his house in a state of despair. That's when he finally saw someone alive on the street. The bright light blurred his vision, and a figure appeared behind him. A shovel slapped him unconscious. It was a boy who shouted for his father to hurry over. Rick looked towards the distance, and an adult figure soon appeared on the street and finished the man just now with one shot. Then he quickly came to Rick's face. Seeing that his son was okay, he asked Rick why he was bandaged up. Rick was a little confused. This man kept asking him what kind of injury he had received. Before Rick could answer, he passed out from exhaustion. When he woke up again, he was already lying in bed. The boy was standing next to him with a weapon. His hand was secured to the bed. The man had changed his bandages. He started to ask Rick what kind of wound he had. Rick reluctantly said it was a gunshot wound. The man touched his forehead again. He then untied the rope. Then Rick came into the living room with a blanket on. Just about to pull open the window to get some air, the man told him not to do so, or they would be attracted to the light in the house. Now it's all over the street outside. Rick didn't understand what he was talking about. He just saw this man shoot a man during the day. The man says it looks like you need to wear glasses. That's a zombie. The three of them then start eating, and it's only during the conversation that they learn that Rick is in a coma after suffering a gunshot wound. He had no idea what was going on, and he just saw bodies everywhere. The man then realized that no wonder Rick acted as if he knew nothing and then explained to him what was going on outside. A month ago, the virus broke out. All the dead people will turn into zombies and attack when they see people. No matter where you are, you have to keep quiet. One of the most important things is not to be bitten. The man saw Rick in bandages during the day. That's why they were so nervous. After being bitten, they would get a fever and become one of the zombies. In the second half of the night, the three started to rest in the living room. They got to know each other. The man's name was Morgan. The friends are all too familiar with him, and this is Morgan's earliest appearance. His son is also still with him. He heard that Rick was a police officer and immediately stood in awe. At this time, there was a car alarm outside. Morgan explained that it was probably a zombie accidentally hitting the car, which had happened before. Then they turned off the lights and went to the window to check. Rick was also curious to look outside. Morgan said the zombies were real. At the moment, there are dozens of zombies roaming around outside. The little boy looked outside and saw a familiar figure, and he got a little excited. This is his mother. Then, he flung himself under the covers and sobbed quietly. Morgan can only comfort him by not crying out loud. Rick is still observing these zombies. This incident has overturned his perception. The next day, Morgan and his son took Rick out. He taught Rick how to deal with zombies. First, the first point is not to treat them as human beings. The second point must be to attack the head. The third point is to use cold weapons as much as possible to avoid attracting more zombies. They just walked out, and the zombies at the door approached them. Rick used a baseball bat towards his head, a series of 7 or 8 smashes, which solved the zombie. This is also Rick's first kill since the end of the world. Then Rick came home again. After a calm analysis, he thought his wife and son should still be alive. At least they were fine when they left here because the drawers in the house were empty. Even the photos and such things were gone, which rekindled his fighting spirit, and he vowed to find them. Morgan then said they were probably headed to Atlanta because the radio had said there was a shelter there, so maybe they were on their way there. With a target in mind, Rick stopped dawdling, grabbed a set of keys, and took Morgan to the police station where he worked. There was a backup electrical system so that they could take a nice shower there. This is also an enjoyment in the post-apocalyptic world. Rick also changed back into a police uniform. They went to the armory and took away all the weapons they could use. Half an hour later, they walked out of the police station. Rick tried to get Morgan to come with him to Atlanta, but he refused. He didn't want to leave town, maybe because of his wife. He also wanted his son to learn how to shoot before he thought about going anywhere else. Rick also stopped trying to persuade him. Everyone has their reasons. Rick then gave him a walkie-talkie. Keep in touch if they go to Atlanta in the future. Thus, the two generations of chiefs are separated here.